everyone. Welcome to Sam's Summaries. This episode is a deep dive discussion into Sam Fury's summary of the book Models by Mark Manson. It has been created with the help of AI. You can read the original summary at samfury.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today we're going to be talking about a book that's been making waves in the dating and relationships world. It's Mark Manson's Models.
Yeah, this one's been on my list for a while now. Everyone keeps talking about it. So I'm excited to finally dig in.
Me too. So Models, it's not your typical dating advice book, right? It's more about personal development and self-awareness, and then how that all ties into building healthy and authentic relationships.
Exactly. It's kind of like he takes this whole self-help approach and applies it specifically to dating and attraction, which is really interesting because a lot of times those two worlds are kind of separate, you know?
Yeah, totally. So we're going to break this deep dive into 3 parts to really get into the meat of it.
So good.
All right, so part 1 is all about reality, which is the first section of the book. And Manson kind of throws us right into the deep end with this concept of non-neediness.
Yeah, that one can be a little intimidating at first glance.
Right.
But once you understand what he's actually saying, it's actually really empowering.
So it's not about being aloof or playing hard to get or anything like that.
No, not at all. It's more about having strong boundaries and self-respect.
Right.
And understanding your worth.
Okay, so can you give us an example of what that might look like in practice?
Sure. So let's say you're interested in someone.
Right.
And you send them a text message. And they don't respond right away. A needy person might start to freak out and overthink it. Right?
Yep.
Like, oh my God, they must not be interested. What did I do wrong? And they might send another text or call or just basically become super clingy.
Yeah, been there, done that.
But a non-needy person would be like, okay, they're busy or they're not checking their phone. It's no big deal. I've got other things going on in my life.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let it affect their sense of self-worth.
That makes sense. So it's about not putting all your eggs in one basket and not making someone your sole source of validation.
Exactly. It's about having a full and fulfilling life outside of your romantic relationships and knowing that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's attention or approval.
I love that. Okay, so non-neediness, it's about self-respect, strong boundaries, and basically not being a stage 5 clinger, which I think we can all appreciate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, here's where things get really interesting, because Manson then introduces this concept of power in vulnerability.
Vulnerability. Now, that seems a little counterintuitive.
Right.
We're usually told to put our best foot forward and hide our flaws, especially when we're trying to attract someone.
Right. That's the traditional advice. But Manson flicks that on its head. He argues that vulnerability is actually a strength, not a weakness.
So what does he mean by vulnerability exactly?
He's talking about having the courage to be authentic and to let people see the real you, flaws and all. It's about not being afraid to show your imperfections and to share your true thoughts and feelings.
So not like spilling your guts on a first date, but just being genuine and not trying to present some perfect facade.
Right. It's about being comfortable with who you are and not being afraid to let people see that.
It's funny because when you think about it, the people we connect with most deeply are often the ones who are willing to be open and vulnerable with us.
Right.
It creates a sense of trust and intimacy.
Exactly. When you're vulnerable, you're basically saying, hey, this is me, take it or leave it. And that can be really attractive because it shows that you're confident and secure in yourself.
It's like you're not trying to win anyone over, you're just being yourself. And the right people will appreciate that.
Exactly. And the wrong people. Well, their rejection becomes a valuable filter.
Ooh, I like that. So vulnerability, it's not about being weak or needy. It's about being authentic and allowing yourself to be seen for who you truly are.
Absolutely. And that ties into the next concept Manson talks about, the gift of truth, which is basically being honest and genuine in your interactions with others.
So not just saying what you think people want to hear, but actually speaking your truth, even if it's not always easy or comfortable.
Right. It's about setting boundaries, respecting yourself, and not chasing after validation.
So how does this all tie back into non-neediness?
Because when you're coming from a place of truth and authenticity, you're less likely to be needy or clingy because you're not seeking validation from outside sources. You're finding it within yourself.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this fits together. It's like building a solid foundation within yourself before you even start trying to build a relationship with someone else.
Exactly. And that foundation is built on self-awareness, honesty, and self-respect.
That's really powerful stuff. So far, we've covered non-neediness, power and vulnerability, and the gift of truth.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started with models. All right, so we're diving into part 2 of models, which is all about strategy. And this is where things get really interesting, because Manson introduces this concept of polarization, which sounds a little intense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But it's actually not as scary as it sounds. Okay, so break it down for us. What does he mean by polarization?
Basically, it's the idea that being your true self, even if it's a little unconventional or maybe even a little bit edgy, will naturally attract the right people and repel the wrong ones.
So instead of trying to be everything to everyone, you're focusing on being authentically you and letting that be the filter for who you connect with.
Exactly. It's like you're creating this magnetic field around yourself. And the people who are drawn to that energy are the ones who are meant to be in your life.
Okay, I can see how that would be a lot more effective than trying to mold yourself into what you think other people want.
It's definitely more authentic. And it saves you a lot of time and energy because you're not wasting your effort on people who aren't a good fit for you.
Right, so you're saying that rejection is actually a good thing in this context.
Absolutely. Because it helps you weed out the people who aren't on the same wavelength as you, and it frees you up to focus on the ones who are.
I never thought of it like that before. But it makes sense. I mean, think about a time when you tried to please everyone. Did it really work?
Probably not. You probably ended up feeling exhausted and unfulfilled.
Yeah, exactly. So embracing polarization, it's about being okay with not being liked by everyone.
Yeah.
And trusting that the right people will be drawn to your authentic self.
And that leads us to another important concept in this section, rejection and success.
Okay. So how does Manson define success in this context?
He says that true success isn't about external validation or achieving some arbitrary standard. It's about living a life that's true to your values and that brings you joy and fulfillment.
I love that because it takes the pressure off of trying to meet other people's expectations.
Yeah.
And it puts the focus back on what really matters, your own happiness.
Exactly. And when you're living a life that you're passionate about and that aligns with your values, you naturally become more attractive to others.
It's like you're radiating this inner confidence and magnetism that people can't help but be drawn to.
Right. You're not trying to get something from them. You're already complete within yourself.
Okay, so we've talked about polarization and rejection and success. What are some other key takeaways from the strategy section?
Well, Manson also emphasizes the importance of having a strong sense of purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah. He says that when you have a clear vision for your life and you're actively pursuing your goals, it gives you this sense of direction and momentum that's really attractive to others.
Makes sense. It's like you're not just drifting through life, you're going somewhere. And that can be really inspiring to be around.
Exactly. It shows that you're ambitious and driven and that you're not afraid to go after what you want.
And that confidence is contagious. It makes people want to be a part of your journey.
And then finally, he talks about the importance of having a strong social circle.
Friends and family. Yeah.
He says that having a supportive network of people around you is crucial for both your personal and romantic well-being.
Because it gives you a sense of belonging and connection.
Right.
And it reminds you that you're not alone.
Exactly. And it also helps you to develop your social skills and to learn how to interact with others in a healthy way.
Which is obviously important for building strong relationships.
Absolutely. So the strategy section of models, it's really about setting yourself up for success in the dating world by focusing on your own personal growth and development.
And by building a strong foundation of self-awareness, purpose, and connection.
Exactly. It's about becoming the best version of yourself so that you can attract the right people into your life.
I love that. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in part 2. Now let's move on to part 3, where we'll be diving into honest living, which I'm really excited about because it gets into the practical steps we can take to embody these principles in our everyday lives.
It can be good.
This is where Manson gets into the nitty-gritty of how our lifestyle choices and habits actually influence our attractiveness. And it's not all about superficial stuff like having a six-pack or driving a fancy car.
Right. He goes way deeper than that. It's more about aligning your actions with your values and creating a life that you're genuinely excited about.
So the first chapter in this section is called Demographics, which sounds a little dry, but it's actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's not about statistics or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding the type of person you want to attract and then asking yourself, am I living in a way that aligns with that?
So, like, if you're looking for someone who's active and outdoorsy, maybe spending all your free time on the couch isn't the best strategy.
Exactly. You want to put yourself in environments where you're likely to meet people who share your interests and values.
It's like that saying, you attract what you are, not what you want.
Right. Exactly. So it's about being intentional with your choices and your lifestyle.
Okay, so we've talked about being intentional with our actions. Now let's talk about our appearance, because Manson does dedicate a chapter to lifestyle and presentation.
And this is where a lot of people get tripped up
Yeah.
because they think it's all about looking a certain way or fitting into some arbitrary standard of beauty.
But that's not what Manson's saying at all, is it?
No, he's actually advocating for a much more holistic approach to self-care. He talks about the importance of hygiene, fitness, and dressing well, but he links these things to self-esteem and confidence.
So it's not about trying to impress other people, it's about feeling good about yourself.
Right. It's about taking care of your physical health and well-being because you deserve it and because it makes you feel good.
And when you feel good about yourself, it shows.
Right.
Probably.
Absolutely. It radiates from within,
Mm.
and that's what makes you attractive.
Okay, so we've covered demographics and lifestyle and presentation. Now let's move on to the next section, which is all about mindset. And this is where things get really juicy.
Oh, yeah. This is where Manson challenges us to examine our beliefs and our thought patterns.
And to identify any limiting beliefs that might be holding us back in our relationships.
He dedicates a whole chapter to What Are Your Stories, which is all about those negative thoughts we tell ourselves that sabotage our efforts before we even begin.
Like, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to get rejected anyway.
Right. Exactly. Those are the classic ones. And they can be so insidious because they often operate on a subconscious level.
So we might not even be aware that we're telling ourselves these stories, but they're still shaping our reality.
Right. And that's why it's so important to bring them to the surface and challenge them.
And Manson provides some really practical tips for doing that, like questioning the evidence for our beliefs and looking for alternative perspectives.
It's all about becoming more aware of our thought patterns and choosing to focus on the positive instead of the negative.
And then once we've started to shift our mindset, it's time to take action.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's where the chapter on how to overcome anxiety comes in.
This is where Manson gets real about the fear of rejection, which is something that pretty much everyone experiences to some degree.
He normalizes that feeling and reminds us that it's okay to be afraid.
But he also encourages us to act despite our fear, because that's the only way to overcome it.
Right. He says that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of fear.
I love that. And he actually provides some really practical tips for managing anxiety, like deep breathing exercises and visualization techniques.
And he also emphasizes the importance of taking small steps outside of your comfort zone.
Because that's how you build confidence and resilience.
Exactly. So the honest action section of models, it's all about taking ownership of your thoughts and feelings.
And then putting yourself out there, even when it feels scary.
And that brings us to the final section of the book, Honest Communication, which is all about expressing yourself authentically and connecting with others on a deeper level.
And this starts with understanding your intentions, right?
Exactly. Manson argues that actions speak louder than words. So it's not enough to just say the right things. You need to actually demonstrate your interest and appreciation through your behavior.
So like if you're interested in someone, don't just tell them. Show them by being attentive and engaged.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into the chapter on how to improve your flirting, which isn't about cheesy pickup lines or manipulative tactics.
It's about being playful, confident, and communicating your interest in a genuine way.
Right. It's about creating a fun and flirty atmosphere where both people feel comfortable and connected.
And then once you've established that connection, it's time to start thinking about the dating process, which Manson approaches in a very non-traditional way.
He's not a fan of rigid rules or games. He believes that dating should be about getting to know someone authentically and seeing if there's a genuine connection.
So he encourages people to be flexible and to go with the flow and to focus on creating shared experiences that allow both people to shine.
And then finally, we get to physicality and sex, which Manson approaches with his signature blend of honesty and practicality.
He emphasizes the importance of confidence, assertiveness, and clear communication of desires and boundaries.
He also talks about the importance of building sexual tension gradually and respecting both partners' comfort levels.
So it's all about creating a dynamic where both people feel safe and empowered to express themselves fully.
Absolutely. So that's models in a nutshell.
It's a pretty comprehensive guide to building healthy and authentic relationships.
Right. It really is. It covers everything from self-awareness and mindset to communication and intimacy.
And it all comes back to that core message of being true to yourself and living a life that you love.
Because when you do that, you naturally attract the right people into your life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this question. What's one small step you can take today to embody these principles in your own life?
It could be anything from setting a boundary with someone to taking some time for self-care, or maybe even just smiling at a stranger.
The important thing is to start taking action. And to trust that the journey is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into models. We hope you found it valuable, and we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas in your own life.
And until next time, keep diving deep.
Thanks for tuning in to Sam's Summaries. If you found this episode useful, let us know with a like, follow, and share. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to visit samfury.com to get free access to all of Sam's original summaries. You can also get any of Sam's books and other exclusive content. It's all completely free at samfury.com.